Jamuna Tiro Bana Sabi Gabara Gopidana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopidana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodhanandana Bhajana Rangana Yasodhanandana Bhajana Rangana Yamuna Tiro Manachadi Yamuna Tiro Manachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Punyabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punyabihari Jaya Radha Mansabri Bhagavad Krishna Jaya Nandakori Vaishnava Jaya Ramadas Haridas Thakur Jaya Name to the whole Sri Krishna Shri Radha Krishna Gopala Sam Radha वृंदावन धाम की जाए नवदीप धाम की जाए गंगा माई की जाए जमुना माई की जाए द्वारका धाम की जाए स्वामी भक्तवृंद की जाए ऑल ग्लोरीज टू दैट ऑल ग्लोरीज टू दैट थैंक यू वेरी मच
Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining the class. It's the end of September, 25th September, over here in Seattle. We just completed the first 4 chapters. And we'll begin our conversation today with chapter 5, titled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. Before we get started, does anyone have any questions, comments so far for the first 4 chapters? Okay. By the way, I know I'm lagging behind in uploading some of the videos that you might have missed. I'll try to get it done this weekend. Last week I was down a little bit with I got some neck sprains. I still have a little bit of that. It's hurting. So I apologize. I'll try to upload those videos pretty soon. Okay, so chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So it's a similar theme in the sense that if you look at the discussion so far, right? In chapter 1, we see that Arjuna was bewildered. He is asking questions about his duties. And in response to that question, Krishna actually answers his question, right? The questions that Arjuna had were already answered in chapter 2. That's why chapter 2 is described as contents of Gita summarized. So in that sense, there is nothing more, but there's always some confusion and misconception, and that's why Arjuna started asking very specific questions. If you look at the beginning of chapter 3, right? Arjuna is asking, because Krishna is talking both about Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. Arjuna wanted to clarify, well, if Jnana Yoga is more important, why you are making me engage in this ghastly war? Why you asking me to do karma as well? If Jnana is supreme, because ultimately that's what the conclusion Krishna gives. Well, you start with karma yoga, but then better than just doing something for the sake of doing, it's important to know why you are doing it, for whom you are doing it, who is the ultimate enjoyer or the beneficiary of one's work, right? And so if Jnana is important, why he should engage in this ghastly war, right? So that's why then chapter 3 was spoken, where Krishna is explaining what karma yoga is, right? And then the same conversation elaborates further in chapter 4, where Krishna is saying, yes, first of all, he's explaining what is karma yoga. And then he says, then he talks about Jnana Yoga in much more detail. So he's explicitly explaining what is Karma Yoga in chapter 3 and Jnana Yoga in much more detail, so that he could answer the question that Arjuna had raised here in the beginning of chapter 3. And then ultimately he says, yes, Jnana Yoga is important or better than Karma Yoga, but Jnana Yoga does not exist in a vacuum. Once you know why something needs to be done, you need to act on it. So it's not that you just have knowledge and then you don't need to do any karma. Jnana Yoga is actually matured karma yoga, where initially one is doing one's prescribed duties without really knowing the purpose, the reason, the means. And then when it matures, one has knowledge, one continues to do that. But now, what is the difference? Well, the difference is that the person knows, why one is doing it, who the beneficiary is, how this is done for the satisfaction of Vishnu. And in this way, one does not become entangled in karma. So this is how the chapter 4 is concluded. But as we will see in the 5th chapter today, Arjuna is again coming back to the same question. So it looks like there are still some lingering doubts, right? So we'll start over here, but you see, right over here, Arjuna is saying, "Oh Krishna, first of all, you ask me to renounce work. Then again, you recommend to do work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial, right?" So it's not that Arjuna did not understand. Now Krishna has already spent 2 chapters talking about Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And as we can see, Arjuna has now got the idea, is a better understanding, because he's saying, instead of in the beginning of 3rd chapter, he was asking, why are you asking me to engage in ghastly war if knowledge is more important? So this question is not the same, it's in similar lines, but it shows that Arjuna has a little bit more mature understanding, because now he's saying, first of all, you ask me to renounce work, and then you clarify that, and then you're saying, okay, not better than renouncing work, it's better to continue doing work, but with devotion, in knowledge, as a sacrifice, right? So now he wants further clarification, that definitely can you bring this to a conclusive state, right? And tell me clearly, explain me which one is better. So that's where the discussion starts. Okay. Arjuna uvacha sannyasam karmanam Krishna punarjogam cha samsasi yat shreya etayorekam tanme bruhi sunischitam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Sri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurue Namaha. Translation. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?" Purport. In this 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that work in devotional service is better than dry mental speculation. Right? So simply knowledge without acting on the knowledge is considered dry mental speculation. Armchair philosophers, right? We have armchair philosophers in all spheres of life, right? Especially the example that most people are familiar is sports. In the US, football is quite popular. In India, cricket, probably Australia also cricket. And when people, they sit in their home, right, in the comfort of their home, they're watching the game on the television. Everyone is an expert, right? They will comment on, well, how somebody should have, as the game is actually happening, they would say, well, this is how one should do, or you should have not played in this way, right? And in this way, it's just everyone has an opinion, right? But if you ask them to go on the field and play, uh, uh, they won't come anywhere close to what these players are playing, right? So to say one thing and no, to say and to know is one thing, but to actually act on it is completely different. So that's a crude example, but the idea is similar thing can be applied, right, in the domain of spirituality. There are people who will talk about spirituality, right? I mean, they can talk at length, but when it comes to practice, they don't have inclination or they fail to do it. For instance, if you go to a university, they have Department of Religious Studies. And there are people who do PhD in a particular topic, because PhDs are very specific, they're very narrow in the scope, but they just go in much more detail. Somebody might do a PhD in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and they would read commentaries of different acharyas, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. They would so they'll read different commentaries, and they will write a thesis on it, and they will talk about how the Gaudiyas, what their understanding is, what Achintya Veda philosophy is, and they will talk at length. But they are not devotees, they are not practicing it, right? It's like what the Shastra says, trying to lick the honey from outside when the honey is filled in a honey bottle, right? And if one's trying to lick without opening the bottle, then one will only taste glass, which does not have much taste, right? You cannot experience nectar. So Bhagavad Gita can be experienced and can be really understood only by devotees. Like Krishna says, Bhaktyam mam abhijananti. Only my devotees, they know me. So similarly, the knowledge that one gathers is not meant for mental speculation or armchair philosophy. One has to actually practice, right? Otherwise, somebody, as I say, somebody could be a doctor, right? But they're not practicing anything. They don't even practice maybe basic morality. The purpose is to actually do devotional service, and that's why Srila Prabhupada translates yoga as service. And when you say service, it's generally an action. It's just not a mental exercise, right? And it's done in devotion. Devotional service is easier than later, being transcendental in nature. It frees one from reaction. And because it's done in devotion means, what is devotional service? As soon as you say devotion, then one has to clarify, well, to whom one is extending the devotion, right? And the devotion is being extended to the Yajna Purus, Vishnu, or Krishna himself. And because it is done for his satisfaction, one is not entangled in karmic reaction. And so in this way, it is transcendental. In the second chapter, the preliminary knowledge of the soul and its entanglement in the material body were explained. So second chapter starts with detailed description about what soul is, what is the nature of the soul, and how the soul is entangled in the material body. So how to get out of this Can everyone hear me? Hare Krishna. Looks like
Now, yes, sir.
I think I lost everyone for like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Kind of weird.
it's fine, Prabhuji, now.
Okay. So I think we are reading this, how to get out of this material engagement by Buddhi Yoga or devotional service was also explained in the second chapter. So Krishna introduces both concepts actually. That's why content of Bhagavad Gita summarized, it talks about Jnana Yoga, which is same as Buddhi Yoga. And then Karma Yoga. Sorry, that is Karma. And then okay, there is Sankhya Yoga, uses different terms. He called it Sankhya Yoga. And then he calls it the Karma Yoga, right? There are two words that he used. So one is knowledge, and another is the work or action. In the third chapter, it was explained that a person who is situated on the platform of knowledge no longer has any duties to perform, right? So this is where I think the confusion starts for Arjuna. Because yes, it's true. The purpose of doing karma yoga is to come to the platform of knowledge. And when one is fully situated in that knowledge, one who has transcended, one who has achieved perfection, having gained that knowledge, there is no need for one to perform the prescribed duties. So at that point, there are two options. One is pravritti marg and nivritti marg. Nivritti marg means one can renounce. One can renounce one's prescribed duties and take the fourth order of life, sannyas. Or even if one is fully realized, one can continue to just to set an example for the masses. Though there is no need for one to perform their duties, they might as well do it, right? So they are not attached either to giving up or to continue doing, right? Because the real meaning of renunciation means that one is indifferent. If needed, they will do it. If just for higher purpose, but they are not obliged to do it. If they want, they might not do it. So both on a transcendental platform, there is no difference. One can either continue to do it or not do it. So one has to reach the transcendental state. But until one has reached that transcendental state, one should not prematurely give up one's prescribed duties, which is what Arjuna was trying to do. He was not really ready, but he wanted to give up. So, but the confusion for Arjuna is because Krishna said, well, once one is perfected, then one does not need to perform any duties. They need not perform any duties, but if they want, or just to set an example, they can continue to do it. And in the fourth chapter, Lord told Arjuna that all kind of sacrificial work culminate in knowledge. Yes. So the purpose of sacrifice is to ultimately know why we are doing the sacrifice. As in fourth chapter, Krishna says that, well, better than mere sacrifice of material objects, better than that is actually sacrifice done in knowledge. So the purpose is ultimately to culminate in knowledge. However, at the end of the fourth chapter, the Lord advised Arjuna to wake up and fight, being situated in perfect knowledge. And when one is in knowledge, then one has to act on that knowledge. And that's why Krishna is telling Arjuna, you'll wake up, fight. But not in ignorance, rather being situated in perfect knowledge. Ignorance means, well, the people might have heard injunction that one should perform one's duties according to one's varna. And as a sense of responsibility or as a sense of duty, they act on it. But while they act on it, they don't know why they are doing it. So better than that is acting, but while being situated in perfect knowledge. Therefore, by simultaneously stressing the importance of both work and devotion and inaction in knowledge, Krishna has perplexed Arjuna and confused his determination. Let's read that again. So there are two things that that at least Arjuna is getting two messages. One is one has to do work in devotion, which is true, right? And before that, he had mentioned inaction in knowledge. So that inaction, and then these two apparently sounds contradictory, and so that's why Arjuna is confused. So what is the difference? Well, it is contextual, as we will learn later in this chapter. Contextual meaning is that for a person who is still on the path to perfection, one should continue to work in devotion, not being attached to the results of one's work, cultivating the knowledge at the same time, right? And the inaction in knowledge in the literal sense that, this in itself, in one way, you can say inaction, because when one is not bound by karmic reactions, right, then that is real inaction. But from an external perspective, the inaction, when one is actually not acting, being perfectly situated in knowledge, one gives up one's prescribed duties, renounces, takes a renounce out of life. That is recommended for those who have already achieved perfection. So that context is not clear to Arjuna, apparently, and so that's why he's confused. These two instructions apply to different stages of realization. Arjuna understands that renunciation in knowledge involves cessation of all kinds of work performed as sense activities. So this is sannyas, right? When one gives up, this is nivritti marg. One actually does not perform any kind of activities. But if one performs work in devotional service, then how is work stopped? So the other question is, well, if somebody is acting in devotion to Krishna, then why would one want to stop? One can continue doing it, which is also right. So at the perfect stage of perfection, they have two choices. Either they can continue to do the prescribed duties because they are not attached to either. They are not attached to continue doing it, or they are not attached to giving it up. In other words, he thinks that sannyas, renunciation knowledge, should be altogether free from all kind of activity. So he only has one conception of sannyas, right? So he's thinking sannyas means one has to necessarily give up the physical, the actual performance of activities of all kinds, because work and renunciation appear to him to be incompatible. So sannyas actually, in a liberated state, has two marg, as I say, pravritti marg and nivritti marg. Both are sannyas. Pravritti means externally one is doing things. So there is inaction, right? We went through that verse. So that's one kind of sannyas on a pravritti marg, where one is actually acting, but that acting is not yielding any karmic reaction. So that is inaction. The other one is one is even giving up the prescribed duties. So both are actually on the same level. There is no difference. But this is not clear to Arjuna, and that's why he's confused. He appears not to have understood that work in full knowledge is non-reactive. So this is what we talked about. Inaction in action. I know it's confusing, and is therefore same as inaction. He inquires, therefore, whether he should cease work altogether or work with full knowledge. So this is like the final conclusion. Definite conclusion is what Arjuna is seeking. Any questions on this verse?
Prabhuji, there's also a concept of Sakam Karma Yoga and Nishkam Karma Yoga. So
Yeah.
the thing that you just explained about the last paragraph, sorry, the last sentence that says full work in full knowledge is non-reactive. Is
Mhm.
that the same thing as Nishkam Karma Yoga?
Yes.
Okay, Prabhuji.
So niskam means one does not have any material desires, right? So this person is fully situated in knowledge. He knows, well, it's not for my enjoyment. Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer. Uh, and one is not one is not expecting any returns, or one is not desiring to achieve anything. But then because one is situated on the transcendental platform, he is not attached to anything, including giving up work or continue doing it. For that individual, both of them are same. He is not attached to either renouncing or attached to continue doing it. And so when such a person continues to act, then there is no reaction, because it's not materially motivated. So that is niskam karma yoga. The other is sakam, means there is desires. One actually, this is a stage where there could have multiple phases in the sakam karma yoga, because one starts from fully materialistic towards the final goal of being situated in knowledge. So it's a gradual process. So initially one might start, one does not even know, has no knowledge uh, that why one is doing. Only one knows that, well, by doing this prescribed duties, by doing my dharma, I will get artha. And by getting artha, I will be able to fulfill my kama desires. And so one goes that route. And at some point, that individual is frustrated, and does not get the same kind of gratification that one got initially, right, due to law of diminishing returns. And then when one starts questioning, right, what is the purpose of life, why I'm doing it, who the beneficiary is of this work, and one starts cultivating knowledge. So that is better than one being fully materialistic. And then slowly over a period of time, as one cultivates that knowledge, one realizes, oh, okay, this has to be done for Krishna's satisfaction. And then one engages in that sacrifice, offers the results of one's work to Krishna, and gradually one cultivates renunciation. So renunciation and the same time cultivates knowledge, they go hand in hand. That's when the devotion fully manifests, because as long as renunciation is not there, one is self-interested. When one is self-interested, how can one express devotion to Krishna? And so gradually one comes to that platform of being fully situated in knowledge. And then one is not materially motivated. And so one can transition from Sakam Yoga to Niskam Karma Yoga. It's good enough?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay.
I just have one
Yes.
question, that what is the difference between actually chapter 3 is also karma yoga, and chapter 5 is also karma yoga. So what is difference between the two chapters? I mean in main essence.
Right. Yeah, this is titled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So here, Karma Yoga is more, you can think of this, in the same line. It's Sakam Karma Yoga versus Niskam Karma Yoga. Because here, you're explicitly making it clear. Okay, Karma Yoga, in full knowledge that this is for satisfaction of Krishna. Right? To answer Arjuna's question that he asked in the previous verse, he wants a definite conclusion. That which one is better, right? Simply to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Right? So work with devotion is action in Krishna consciousness. Initially, in chapter 3, Krishna is explaining the basis of karma yoga, right? But he does not go into much more detail. So he also, if you look at see karma yoga, for instance, there's a description of by offering sacrifices for different kind of uh, conveniences by which one can live happily. So there is sakam, there is some desire for sense enjoyment. There will prosperity will reign for all. So it is understood. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to demigods in return is certainly a thief, right? So by doing karma, one does get results. So there is some description of that. So Krishna talks about why there was yajna. From yajna, the rains are produced. From the rains, we get grains. Grains people need for subsistence. So there's a lot of the idea of sakam. Krishna acknowledges that people have desires, and the desires are fulfilled. But then he also talks about what is the ultimate purpose of karma yoga. So now here he exclusively will talk about work in devotion. Because one has to start at sakam karma yoga. You cannot expect anyone to be directly situated on the transcendental platform. Even when one takes to spirituality, they are not. They are coming in to spirituality with some self-interest, right? That well, how this can benefit me, right? And in the process, then one will really understand that if Krishna is satisfied, everyone, the devotee is automatically satisfied. His needs are already taken, so one need not explicitly make that personal endeavor. So does that answer your question?
Yes. So I mean, in a brief, we can say that like in chapter 3, it was not in detail. Where I mean, in chapter 5, it will be combination of like bhakti and karma together, so that becomes a Krishna consciousness. And chapter 3 is mainly talking about the karma yoga, which is actions mainly to either to fulfill the desires or some other things, but it is not with addition of the bhakti together with karma. So this here we will get more clarity about how the karma should be performed.
Yeah, in general, yes, yeah. Because I mean, the theme of bhakti was also touched in karma yoga, also chapter 3, but it was not quite clear to Arjuna. So now the emphasis would be more again in chapter 5, right? So it's not that chapter 3 only talks about sakam karma yoga. Krishna has touched the point, but it's not clear to Arjuna at least. So here now we'll discuss that in much more detail. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannyasah Karma Yogascha Nishreyasa Karaugo Tayostu Karma Sannyasat Karma Yogo Vishishyate. Translation: The personality of Godhead replied, renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, the work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. So here Krishna is giving him a direct answer. And then he will elaborate on it. But he's just making it clear that work in devotion is better. Actually, both are good. He's saying renunciation of work and work in devotion both are good. But of the two, it's better that one actually continues doing one's prescribed duties in devotion than renouncing one's work. Purport: fruitive activities seeking sense gratification are cause for material bondage. As long as one is engaged in activities aimed at improving the standard of bodily comfort, one is sure to transmigrate to different types of bodies, and thereby continuing material bondage perpetually. Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5 verses 4 through 6 confirm this as follows. It's a very famous verse from Bhagavatam. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yad indriya pritaya aprinoti na sadhu manye yat atmano ayam asanna piklesha da asadeha. Right, so at least the first verse quite famous. People are mad after sense gratification and they do not know that this present body, which is full of miseries, is a result of one's fruitive activities in the past. And although this body is temporary, it is always giving one trouble in many ways. There's a lot to unpack. Maybe we'll do just one line at a time. So people in general, they are very much interested in gratifying their senses. The senses are made in such a way they're attracted to sense objects. The eyes, they want to see nice things. The tongue wants to taste nice food. The ears want to hear nice music. So in this way, the senses are attracted to different sense objects. And people, they spend most of their lives in gratifying their senses. So in that sense, they're mad. But they do not know that this present body is full of misery. So everyone has experienced miseries, but what they do is they overlook it. And he says, well, though there are miseries, let's not worry about that. Let's just focus on sense enjoyment, because that is what is pleasing. They will try to come up with different solutions to stop the miseries. But then intelligent person, one is really intelligent, will notice that no matter what I do, the miseries still come. And one who is intelligent will understand the futility of one's effort in trying to stop different miseries. No matter what happens, miseries never stop. So what are the different kind of miseries? Well, one is miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. That never goes away. Birth is painful. When one takes birth, you never see anyone taking birth laughing and smiling. One is forced out of mother's womb in a very stressful situation, forced out through a very small narrow passage. Before that, in the embryo for 9 months in the human form of life, right? The gestation period is 9 months, but it is very painful how the body develops. One is cramped in a dark place. In the amniotic fluid, there are different kind of germs and worms. They would bite the tender skin of the child. If the mother eats something spicy, then the child actually feels the pain. And it's like it's surgery that is happening on the child's body as different organs are being formed. So birth is painful, death is painful. No one wants to die. If we have to give up our home in which we lived for a long time, we are attached to it. At the time of death, and we feel anxiety and we feel sad that, okay, I'm moving on or whatever, right? And at the time of death, one has to give up everything that one knows and one is attached to. Death is painful. And then old age and disease. Those are, we can understand, and they are painful as well. And disease, no matter how much medical science progresses, the diseases will always be there, and new diseases will come. So if you see the history, you will find vaccines for so many different kind of diseases. And as long as people take those vaccines over a period of time, maybe you can say it is eradicated, but there's always a chance that disease will again prop up because somebody was not vaccinated. And then new diseases crop up, right? No one had heard about COVID-19. Now it's a big issue. So it doesn't matter how much medical science progress, diseases will always be there. And there is no cure for old age either. Now, if you see the history, Vedic literature, there are so many powerful people, Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, they all tried to conquer death, disease, old age. No one has been able to do it. So in general, the miseries are also classified in 3 other categories: Adi, Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, Adi Devik. Adhyatmik means miseries of our own body and mind. They are self-created. So mind means there are mental issues, psychological, depression, stress. Why somebody behaved in this way, why someone said this to me, different kind of anxieties. Body, Sarira, Vyadhi Mandira. So this body is a temple of miseries. There are miseries caused by other living entities, maybe mosquitoes, or people do some kind of harm to us, physical harm. And then there are miseries caused by higher powers, Adi Devik, which is hurricanes, tornadoes, cyclones, droughts, extreme rainfall, earthquakes. So in this way, we are all tormented by different kind of miseries. But and there is no solution to this. And despite of this, if one continues to engage in sense gratification like a madman, then one is not seeing the reality. One is trying to just overlook. One is not trying to understand one's precarious position. So that is foolishness. So, and then we are put into this situation because of our past karma. And somebody might say, well, it is only temporary, right? It will go away. Well, yeah, it will go away. But it will again come back, right? And so it is constantly bothering us. So suppose, if somebody says this is such a nice food, right? If I want to eat some nice sweets that I like, but at the same time, I have anxiety. Okay, you only have 15 minutes to finish. After that, you have say deadlines for work. You see in corporate environment, people, they're always so much stressed. And higher the position goes in the corporation, you'll see that the worst food is what the dietary habit starts getting worse. The higher one makes progress. I've seen senior executives where they hardly have any time for lunch. They might skip lunch, or they might get something from the vending machine, which is like cold food. Throw it in a microwave, they flash it up, becomes warm, they eat. And so it is very stressful. So the happiness, whatever little happiness one has, it's mixed in the sense that it's not pure happiness. There's always some misery or pain associated. In order to procure that happiness, one has to work very hard, and one has to really endeavor. And when one gets it, one even cannot enjoy it nicely. And there's always some anxiety, or something that's bothering, or their health is not good, and they say you cannot eat this because it will make your health worse. You're diabetic, you cannot eat sweet. Or you don't have time because you have a deadline. Now you have got that status. Now you have to work hard to maintain that status, and for maintaining that status, one has to give up things that one really would relish and enjoy. They might go to vacation to Hawaii, but they are still on their phone replying emails, right? So it's not a pure bliss or enjoyment. So therefore, one who is intelligent, one who understands this, simply to act for sense gratification is not good. So one is considered to be a failure in life as long as he makes no inquiry about his real identity. So in this way, from just to maintain status in the society, one never inquires. You say, okay, this is how everyone lives, I'm going to live my life the same way. And one is not really inquisitive to really understand what one's real identity is. Why is one is put into this situation? So that is foolishness. That is failure. The material success is anyway failure, because nothing lasts, right? So if whatever success one has achieved in terms of power, position, money, wealth, it will be gone one day, either in due course of time or definitely at the time of death. So that is a definite failure. It is guaranteed. And when one hits the grave, a a rich man and a pauper or a king. Their graves might be next to each other. What's the difference? No difference. They all reach the same destination. So as long as he does not know his real identity, he has to work for fruitive for sense gratification. Because one does not know that the ultimate beneficiary is Vishnu, then whom will one work for? They will work for their own sense enjoyment. And as long as one is in the consciousness of sense gratification, one has to transmigrate from one body to another body, because we are never satisfied by that enjoyment. The nature of the soul is to always be happy. But this material body is not the means to fulfill that desire to be always happy, uninterrupted happiness, pure happiness without any anxiety, and which is everlasting, eternal, and does not stop. That can never be achieved in this material body. And so, because the nature of the soul is to aspire for that, one will continue to cherish and aspire. But because one does not know one's identity, one falsely considers one's body as their identity, they will seek happiness at the wrong place, right? And we have unlimited desires, and then different material bodies or biological bodies are suitable to fulfill different kind of desires. The kind of enjoyment, suppose somebody likes snow a lot, right? I'm not a snow person, but people, they would, winter comes, you want to go tubing, you want to go skiing, right? But how many hours one ski out in the cold? Again, you have to wear so many gloves, jacket, cap, like so much gear you need to make sure you don't get you don't feel too cold, or you don't get a frostbite or whatever. But if one is in a body of a polar bear, then one doesn't have to uh, doesn't need any external gear. One can live in snow for a long time, right? And so different bodies are suitable for different kind of sense enjoyment. And to the extent we pursue all these different kind of, we have these desires for different kind of sense enjoyment, we will, in due course of time, we will be forced to accept bodies which are suitable for fulfilling a particular kind of sense enjoyment. We might end up with the body of a polar bear. But even in that body, maybe there is some sense enjoyment of being in snow. But then there is misery and anxiety as well. And you have to constantly search for food, right? And right now, it's probably not a good time for polar bears with global warming. All the icebergs and they are melting. They're saying the polar bears now don't even have their habitat. The snow is just melting and going away, right? So in this way, the transmigration to different bodies is not, though it helps fulfill different kind of desires, it's still same situation, that sense enjoyment also won't be pure and it won't be uninterrupted. Especially animal form of life is very miserable. One is constantly looking out if a predator might come and attack me. They're constantly searching for food. Sometimes they get food, sometimes they don't. They are hunting, and not there every time they are successful. Even the predators, the carnivores, they don't have a very high success rate. Not that every attempt will be successful. So, although the mind may be engaged in fruitive activities and influenced by ignorance, one must develop a love for devotional service to Vasudeva. Only then one can have the opportunity to get out of the bondage of material existence. Now, why Vasudeva? Of course, there's an entire logical sequence which leads us to that conclusion. It's not described over here in this particular verse, but we'll study this. It's the topic of study in Bhagavad Gita, where we come to the conclusion of who we are. We are a soul. What is our original source or origin? How we related? And then how do we achieve that? Therefore, jnana or knowledge that one is not this material body but spirit soul is not sufficient for liberation. So though this is a starting point to understand that we are this body, that in itself is not sufficient for perfection, because as soon as you say we are spirit soul, then we have to identify what is our source. Just like if I say I'm this body, where this body came from? Well, my body was provided to me by my parents. So now when we say I'm spirit soul, what is my relationship with that source? And if I've forgotten, how do I re-establish it? So all that needs to happen. One has to act in the status of a spirit soul. Otherwise, there is no escape from material bondage. So acting in the status of spirit soul means when one understands one's relationship with Krishna, one acts on the understanding of that relationship. Just like if I consider myself as an employee of such and such corporation, having understood my position and status, I will act according to that status. Or if I say, well, I'm related to my wife, my son, then I have to act on that platform. If I just tell my son that, well, you're my son, I love you, but then I don't act on that understanding, okay, that means I'm going to make arrangements for his needs, his emotional needs, physical needs, his education. If I don't act on that, if I say, no, I love you, but that's it, I don't act on it, then it's meaningless, right? It's only words. So similarly, when we say I'm a spirit soul, I'm part and parcel of Krishna, I'm not this body, but that's all, and I understand it, but I'm not going to act on that understanding, that it's meaningless, right? So when we act on that understanding, when we express our devotion in devotional service, then that is the basis of any relationship, in material world or spiritual world. When we have a relationship, then there is association, there is exchange of gifts, there is exchange of service, and that is enjoyable. It's not a drudgery, right? But it is also a source of enjoyment. Action in Krishna consciousness is not, however, action on a fruity platform. It's not business. Like if I go to the market and trade, I'm selling something, in return I get money. But if I'm doing it something for my son, and it's a selfless service, not expecting anything in return. So fruity platform means I want results, I want fruits of that action. But Krishna consciousness is not like that. So we can understand that from other examples, like relationship within family members, especially love of a mother for one's child is completely selfless. Activities performed in full knowledge strengthen one's advancement in real knowledge. So theoretical understanding and practical realization. When we perform the activities in knowledge, then we have real experience of that knowledge. Earlier, we only had a theoretical understanding, and now we really know, oh, this is what it really means, because now I have experienced it, right? So this applies in all spheres of life. If you remember our classes, for instance, when we are learning science in high school, we have theory and we have practical. And we sit in the class and there's theory and maybe we understand something, well, most people don't. It's kind of boring. But when you go in the lab and you do it, like, oh, this is what it really means, right? So you're acting on that knowledge. Without Krishna consciousness, mere renunciation of fruitive activities does not actually purify the heart of a conditioned soul. Why is that? Again, the soul, as I said, is related to Krishna, is part and parcel of Krishna, has a relationship with Krishna. That is his natural position, and when one acts on that platform, it is blissful. Soul by nature is also very active. So if I give up my fruitive activities, it's elimination of the negation, because one realizes that fruitive activities are always painful. I have to work very hard, and the results that I get for my own sense enjoyment, that sense enjoyment is also temporary and it is mixed, it's not pure. And with that realization, if simply gives up one's gives performance of fruitive activities, then one can say, okay, now I don't have the miseries of working. I don't have the misery of getting mixed results. And one feels a little bit of relief, but it does not actually provide the ultimate bliss that the soul is looking for. And that actually happens when one goes beyond the platform of neutrality. Though one has overcome the negative spectrum and has come to the platform neutrality, one has to go beyond, go into the positive spectrum where one is engaging in activities, but not with fruitive mentality this time, but for satisfaction of Krishna. Then one actually experiences bliss, first purifying the heart and then experiencing the bliss after that purification. Just like when again in a family relationship, when father does something for the family members, for one's child, or child expresses his love for the parent by doing something very insignificant from a material perspective. Maybe he will bring your bag, he can hardly walk, but he's carrying your bag and bringing it to you. So that gives pleasure. Right? The child is sitting, not doing anything, right? He's a family member, but then there's no exchange of activities, then it's boring, right? But this kind of different instances, they give pleasure. So similarly, the soul has a relationship with Krishna. And by engaging in that relationship, one will actually go through purification and experience bliss. As long as the heart is not purified, one has to work on a fruitive platform. So work cannot be given up. Even those who give up, the devotees who are on a nivritti marg, right? That means they have given up prescribed duties. They're not performing prescribed duties. Having achieved perfection, what are they doing? The mind is still active. They are meditating on the Astakal Leela of Krishna, or they're chanting his names or reading about him. So the mind is then surcharged in meditation of Krishna. So either way, one cannot be inactive. So activity will always be there. The choice is whether we want to pursue activity on a transitory platform with a fruitive mentality to achieve something that won't last forever, or if we should act in proper knowledge with our goal, which is not transitory, rather transcendental, that is everlasting and will provide the real bliss, the uninterrupted eternal bliss that the soul is seeking for. But action in Krishna consciousness automatically helps one escape the result of fruitive action, so that one need not descend to the material platform. So the neutrality, see, as soon as you go to the positive platform or the positive spectrum, one has automatically overcome the negative spectrum, is it not? So if it's in a negative range of numbers, one way to overcome is come to zero, neutrality, which is what giving up the one's prescribed duties amounts to. But if one goes to the positive spectrum, one need not separately endeavor to give up the negative spectrum. It's automatically achieved. Similarly, when one is acting in Krishna consciousness, one doesn't have to separately endeavor to overcome the miseries of fruitive activities. Because that's what people who want simply liberation, they are achieving. I just don't want the miseries of karmic implications, but they don't have the idea of the positive realm. But by positively, instead of just giving it up, rather one engages those activities for its real purpose, for satisfaction of Krishna, the negative implications are automatically overcome. Therefore, action in Krishna consciousness is always superior to renunciation, which always entails a risk of falling. What is the risk of falling? Because the nature of the soul is to be always active, even when, excuse me, even when somebody renounces one's prescribed duties, it is highly likely that they might be forced back in the of material activities. You see many examples. Sannyas, having taken sannyas, sannyas means one has given up all, they have achieved that highest perfection of life, in the sense that they have really understood the purpose of life, and they are acting on the platform of sannyas, where they have given up all kind of prescribed duties, and one are satisfied in that situation. But if one is not, if one has artificially renounced, then what will happen? One will be forced back to the material sphere. That is what falling down is. One is meaning that one falls down from the position of sannyas. So having taken sannyas, one is again forced to take up one of the activities according to the varnas, right? So, for instance, we have one of them is the chief minister. Now he's doing great things, for the cause of the state, and so there is no. I'm not condemning that, but the point is, if one is calling oneself a yogi or a sannyasi, is wearing saffron, then has nothing to do with politics. One has nothing to do with administration or any other prescribed duties. That's what real sannyas means, right? So we see many examples that the individuals, they are forced back to the platform of mundane activities on the material platform, because they have not really gone through purification. Renunciation without Krishna consciousness is incomplete, as is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. When persons eager to achieve liberation renounce things related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking them to be material, their renunciation is incomplete. So this is one of the faults when one artificially renounces, considering something as material. So whatever is considered as material is also an energy of Krishna. Where did that material come from? They say, this sansar, is an illusion. So you say this moh maya hai, sabka tyag karo. But that creation itself is creation of the Lord. And so to renounce it with such an understanding that, this is all material, it's all illusory, is an imperfect understanding, because they do not see the relationship of even the material creation with Krishna. Real renunciation means one sees everything with Krishna in the center, and see how everything is related to Krishna, how everything is meant for satisfaction of Krishna. Prior to that, the understanding is, well, I am the center of the universe. How everything in this world can be used for my own enjoyment. So that consciousness has to change, and one has to come to the platform of Krishna consciousness. So while that process happens, there are certain individuals who have at least understood that this world is a place of misery, and so they want to give up. But then their understanding is incomplete, because they don't see that, well, what is the, if this is created by Krishna, there must be some purpose. Krishna has given this body to perform activities. Everything has a purpose. I have been using it for wrong purpose, and that's why it has been the source of misery for me. Then I should find out what is the right purpose. But instead, they just simply renounce. And so that renunciation is incomplete. Renunciation is complete when it is in knowledge that everything in existence belongs to the Lord and no one should claim proprietorship over anything. So that is perfect renunciation, not a half-baked renunciation where one is rejecting something without understanding the purpose for it. Everything has a purpose. We might not understand it. You can use something for right purpose also, like weapons can be perpetuating crime, right? And so somebody might say, well, these weapons are the cause of the crime. And so I'm going to renounce the weapons. I'm going to renounce violence. Like Arjuna, I say, I'm going to renounce violence. Violence is the cause of all miseries. You see, so many men will die, and then women will become widows. There would be unwanted progeny, and so many other problems. So violence is the cause of problem. I'm going to renounce violence. Well, violence also has a purpose. What is the right purpose? When violence is used for the right cause, in the right way, then violence also has a purpose. That understanding is a complete understanding. Yes, violence is used by certain individuals for committing crime, but that's not the only purpose. Violence can be used to stop crime. So understanding the right purpose and acting with that understanding is perfect. But artificially renouncing something because somebody is using a resource for wrong reasons, that is imperfect. So in the 18th chapter later in Bhagavad Gita, we'll also learn renunciation is also in 3 modes of nature. Renunciation in the mode of goodness, renunciation in the mode of passion, and renunciation in ignorance. Renunciation, renouncing something whimsically without understanding the purpose. That is in the mode of ignorance. Renouncing something in order to achieve something else. You renounce one thing so that you can achieve, like people renounce, maybe you want to gain some political purpose, you want to make a point, or you say, I'm going to focus on this, that's why I'm going to renounce this. And that's passionate. And renouncing for the ultimate benefit of the world and for and of the soul, for one's own self-liberation, that is in the mode of goodness. So renunciation also has a purpose. Everything has a purpose. You have to understand what the right purpose is. And if we are ready, we have to see at what level we are. So once you understand that factually nothing belongs to anyone, then where is the question of renunciation? That's another point, right? So as soon as you say, I want to renounce something, well, in order to renounce, first of all, we need to own something. I can only renounce things that I own. But one who has really understood the reality will know that, well, nothing belongs to me, right? The property, the position that I have received or have achieved in due course of time, I could have never achieved on my own. There are so many people who helped me. You can say, I passed the interview or whatever, I was selected for this job, but how come you were able to pass the interview? Because you had experience from previous companies, so now you're indebted to the previous company. How did you get job in the previous company? Well, at some point you had to start. Well, you need to have some good education. Well, who provided you education? Well, your teachers provided the education. There's government or other institutes who build those colleges. Our parents paid the fees. The body by which we gain knowledge is also provided by parents. So you see that nothing that belongs to us, everything that we have is provided by someone. So then where is the question of renunciation? We can only renounce things which are owned by us. So one who knows that everything is Krishna's property is always situated in renunciation. Because that individual does not have the false sense of proprietorship. When people have the sense of proprietorship, then there is a question of renunciation that comes up. But when one really has that realization that actually nothing belongs to me, everything, not just theoretical understanding, but one actually realizes and feels that, acts on that platform, then one will be very judicious in terms of how he uses Krishna's property and resources in his service, instead of using it for one's own sense enjoyment. Since everything belongs to Krishna, everything should be employed in the service of Krishna. This is a perfect form of action in Krishna consciousness. It is far better than any amount of artificial renunciation by sannyasi of the Mayavadi school, or the school which has impersonal understanding of the absolute truth. Any questions on this particular verse?
I had one question, Guruji. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
So, why is sannyas supposed to be the most, or renunciation supposed to be the most supreme form of, like you said, that understand the purpose of life? Why is sannyas the most supreme? I mean, we are humans, and there is a reason why we have been designed in certain way and to conduct. I mean, if it would have been that where that these things are not supposed to be material desires, or they are not supposed to be part of the human system, then we would not be having it. What is the point of having it then renunciating them? Right? So that's what I wanted to understand.
Yeah, it's very so absolutely true. Everything has a purpose, right? So even renunciation has a purpose. So one, this is what the sum and substance of this verse is. So when people don't have proper understanding, they come to the wrong conclusion. So what is the purpose of renunciation? Well, as I said, renunciation, if it done in the proper mood, then that also has a purpose, like renunciation in the mode of goodness. So before we get there, everything should be used in the service of Krishna. That's what Krishna is saying, right? So work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. So that is the complete understanding. That is a full understanding, right? But people have misconception that, well, spirituality means renunciation of one's prescribed duties, right? That is the misunderstanding that people have. Actually, better than merely renouncing one's prescribed duties to continue acting in devotional service. Krishna is confirming over here. So now, then question is, well, why there is sannyas ashram? I think that's what you're asking, right? You start with the brahmachari ashram, and you have grihastha ashram, the vanprastha ashram, and then sannyas ashram, right? Then why is the recommendation of sannyas ashram if work in devotional service is better? I believe this is the essence of your question. Is that right?
Yeah. So not sannyas ashram per se, because that is part of the one ashram in everyone's life, but it is more about you spoke about people who wear the saffron and renounce the material world. So what I wanted to know was, why is that considered to be the considered supreme rather than be considered as one way? It's one way of.
Why is that considered? Yeah, you're
I mean,
saying
it's one
okay. So you see,
renouncing is one way. Doing your prescribed duties as a kshatriya, as a vaishya, is one way, right? And both are equally supreme. I wanted to understand why renouncing the world is considered to be most supreme. I mean, that's what I heard that in one of your explanations, that is the most supreme way of realizing the purpose of life. So that is where I had a little doubt.
okay. Or did I say that renouncing work is supreme? I don't know if I
No,
misspoke.
it was no. Okay, maybe. So what I heard was that sannyas is sannyas, where you renounce the material aspect of human life, is the supreme form of realizing the purpose of life. Something like that I followed. So
Okay.
from that it followed that while we what I remembered was it's one of the ways leading a life, and not necessarily superior. But yes, the people who are, and then you mentioned about people who adorn saffron, they have nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with any kind of achievement or for self or for the others. When I say achievements, it's not necessarily material achievements for self, but it's the outcome that they achieve for themselves or for the society in terms of politics, leadership, social service. That is one, and as against that, there is a state of total renunciation and understand the real purpose of life. I wanted to know that is that superior, or because not many can achieve it? Because you also mentioned, that some people then fall because they incorrectly or incomplete. They are incomplete in the conquest of being in sannyas. So it's very difficult, and that's why. So I only wanted to clarify whether it's supreme and it cannot be done by all. Is that the reason why we don't pursue it, or is it that it is only one way of doing it and not superior than being in this world and performing those duties with devotion to Krishna?
Got it. Okay. So I think there are a lot of things to cover over here. So let me start with the ultimate. Let's talk about sannyas first, right? So sannyas ashram, we'll start with that. So sannyas ashram logically follows after, one goes through brahmacharya ashram, then grihastha ashram, then vanprastha ashram, then sannyas. That's in the normal course of activities. Mostly brahmanas take sannyas towards the end of the life. Kshatriyas at the most go through vanprastha. They don't take sannyas. There could be rare exceptions. And you see the Vaishyas, they typically are not suitable for even going through vanprastha ashram. And for the Sudras, the Grihastha ashram is the only ashram recommended. So it does change by varna. Now, in exceptional situations, you might see that certain individual might directly take sannyas ashram without going through Grihastha ashram and vanprastha ashram. Somebody of exceptional caliber and renunciation, right after brahmacharya ashram, they would immediately take sannyas. You will see some empowered acharyas doing that immediately after brahmachari ashram. In Madhva Sampradaya, we see that a lot as well, right? So right from young age, they would take sannyas. So now, what is sannyas? So sannyas also, there is a Vaishnava understanding of sannyas, and there is a Mayavadi understanding of sannyas. So Mayavadi are impersonalists, right? They have the understanding that, well, the absolute truth is impersonal, does not have a person. And because they do not recognize the personality of God, they don't see everything in relationship with God. And so when they take renunciation and when they take renounce order of the life, they completely give up the performance of all kind of prescribed duties, including the service to the absolute truth or Krishna, because they don't have the idea of the personality of Godhead. So their sannyas is essentially giving up of everything because they don't see in relationship, and they don't see everything in relationship to Krishna. So then you might see that, but the nature of the soul is active, right? So what they will do. So if somebody is really elevated, maybe they will try to meditate on the Brahman. That means they will sit down somewhere and they will focus or meditate on the Brahman effulgence. Now, this is extremely difficult, especially in the current age or even in Kali Yuga. So what happens is most of these Mayavadi sannyasis or impersonalists, they come down to the material platform in the sense that they would take up again material activities for which is altruism, or could sometimes they join politics, which is extended sense enjoyment in the sense that, well, because they really don't understand the position of the soul and relationship to Krishna, they will try to help people on a material level. They might open orphanages, they might engage in distribution of food, which is, I'm not saying that in itself is bad or anything, but the point is that this is on a material platform. It's not on a spiritual platform, right? And that's why or they might open hospitals, for instance, right? So it's not a completely spiritual activity, though it is altruistic. Because the nature of the soul is active, so they will be forced to take up some work. So they are not able to renounce work. The sannyas, the sannyas in the Vaishnava Sampradaya it has a different perspective. The Vaishnavas, they understand that everything is in relationship to Krishna, right? And so when they take up sannyas, this is actually it is done to use sannyas ashram as a means to gain people's attention and engage them in the service of Krishna. What I mean by that is, in the Vedic culture, generally the tendency, because of the culture, is that anyone who wears saffron, people respect them. They take them seriously. They are willing to listen them. So at least those who come from that culture, right? The culture is reducing, but the people in saffron, they are respected. So they say, okay, I am now situated in knowledge. I have proper understanding. I have come to the platform of knowledge, Jnana Yoga. For me, I'm indifferent to whether I have to continue doing devotional service or continue doing my prescribed duties, or if I give up my prescribed duties and assume saffron robes and take the renounced order of the life. I'm indifferent. I'm not attached to either. But I want to benefit the humanity on a spiritual platform, not on a material platform by opening hospitals or just simply providing food and shelter. But everyone should also understand their spiritual position and revive their relationship with Krishna. They will be willing to listen me if I assume the renounced order of life. So for the purpose of emancipation of masses, the Vaishnavas, they take sannyas. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas for the same reason. He's Krishna himself, right? He appeared as a devotee. He was a teacher of Sanskrit grammar, but none of his students, they took him seriously. So after he took initiation, he got in the chanting of the holy names. His students, they started making fun of him. They considering him, oh, what happened? Nimai Pandit has become mad. He's just chanting the names of Krishna. So he said, the people, my purpose of appearing in this world will not be fulfilled because people won't take me seriously. So he took up sannyas. And by culture, as soon as they see sannyasi, people are willing to listen and they bow down to him. So he used sannyas ashram to engage people in Krishna's service. So traditionally, sannyasis, again, they live a very simple, renounced life. They don't have material opulence. They are not supposed to stay at one place for more than few days. They would travel by foot. They would have, and even when they go for big, collect alms, they would go from door to door, and there are different gradations of sannyas also, but they might have decided, well, the first 4 homes I'll go, or first 5 homes I go, whatever I'll get, I'll take it. If I don't get anything, then I skip the meal for that day. And then when they are taking those alms, the idea is that they provide them the spiritual knowledge. It's not just say, don't just give blessings, but they provide real knowledge, so that those who are grihasthas, they come to the proper spiritual knowledge. So that's the whole idea. So the reason why sannyasi, the Vaishnavas, they take sannyas is very diametrically opposite to the Mayavadis who take sannyas. Mayavadis, they take sannyas because of imperfect understanding. They say their understanding is the whole world is simply a product of illusion. And so, it has to be renounced or rejected. Right. So they don't see that this is creation of Krishna because they don't have the understanding of Krishna. They don't have the understanding of the personality, that the God is a person, he is a form. They think that it's formless. But because the nature of the soul is to be active, they cannot remain. What will they do? Okay, I renounced everything. What should I do now? Nothing to do, right? And so they are forced to take up different altruistic activities. The proper understanding of renunciation. So the Vaishnavas have nothing to renounce. As we saw in this purport, you can renounce only things that we own. right? If we don't own anything, what are we supposed to renounce? The question of renunciation, when nothing belongs to anyone. So they see, so there is no need for Vaishnavas to renounce. The only reason they renounce is, well, people, they want people to be benefited, and people won't listen to them. But if somebody is sannyasi, oh, he is such a great background, he had so much wealth or knowledge, great family, but this person has renounced everything. So renunciation is one of the opulence. Of the 6 opulences, right, which is beauty, knowledge, fame, wealth, strength. Last one is renunciation. Why is renunciation an opulence? Because it's honorable in the sense that there was no reason for someone to renounce. Still, somebody, this person has taken a life of simplicity. Then people give respect, and when people give respect, then they are willing to listen. We are only willing to listen people towards whom we have respect, right? That respect might can come from n number of reasons. If we don't respect someone, we are not interested in listening. So the Vaishnavas, they take sannyas because they know that at least cultured people, they have respect for those who have renounced everything, and then they will be more willing to listen, right? Otherwise, okay, if I am the same, or this person is just like me, he has a corporate job, he works, maybe he has same material desires that I have. Because people cannot understand how somebody is situated in pure Krishna consciousness. They will see it's just like me. They just look at externals. That person might be very self-realized. He might be a pure devotee of Krishna, but from an external perspective, it's just like everyone else. And the people, they don't take seriously. That's what happened with Nimai Pandit. He says, "Oh, he's just a grihastha. He's teaching. He's maintaining himself. What does he know?" So his purpose in delivering all the souls would not have been fulfilled. But when he took sannyas, he said, "Oh, sannyasi, I have to immediately done with pranam. I have to pay obeisances." They are willing to listen. So it's a different purpose. So what is the purpose of sannyas? Well, this is the reason why sannyasi, the Vaishnavas, they take sannyas for the benefit of mankind. Otherwise, there's no reason for sannyasis to renounce. Like the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, they lived a very simple life, but they were not just, they were sitting and chanting the names of Krishna, remembering him, right? And at the same time, they composed unlimited literature, all the commentaries and, so many literature, Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. They excavated the lost places of Vrindavan. People had completely forgotten about Vrindavan. 5,000 years later, the whole place was covered by bushes and forest, and all the pastimes where Krishna performed his different places where Krishna performed his pastimes, they were all lost. So the excavation of those places, establishing the temples, all the spiritual activities were done by the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the 6 Goswamis. They re-excavated Vrindavan, which was completely lost. So their contribution to mankind was tremendous on a spiritual platform, not like on the mundane platform. Hope, does that answer the question? Yashish?
Sorry, I was speaking on mute. Yes, and it does very well. And I like this, what you mentioned, what is showing on screen, situated in renunciation. I think that answers, that resolves my doubt to a large extent. That renouncing means you have to, that sentiment of being situated in a state of renunciation. It's not necessarily measured by what material things we have left behind. It's the motive and the sentiment behind the renunciation that makes it supreme. And it's not the sannyasi or the saffron bearer, but also the Vaishnava who is doing the prescribed duties with the being situated in renunciation. So exactly. I really got that resolved. Thank you so much.
Right. And by the same logic, since everything has a purpose, sannyas also has a purpose. So that purpose of sannyas is what the Vaishnavas have realized. He says, okay, we can even use sannyas ashram for the service of Krishna. How? The people will be more willing to listen us. And then we engage them in that fashion. So there is nothing that does not have a purpose. Everything can be used for service of Krishna. And that's why Srila Prabhupada carefully used his term or the essence of his message excuse me, as Krishna consciousness, right? So the word consciousness is important. Everything is subtle. We don't have to bring about drastic change in our way of living. What needs to change is our consciousness. So that's the most important point. Okay, I think we are already about time. So we completed what, 2 verses? Okay. Any other question? Maulik? Okay. You're back on.
Yeah, not question actually. I was just asking that there will be any time changes, basically daylight saving going off for your region in next month?
November, first Sunday of
Oh.
November. Still got some time. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. For us, it would be first week of October. That's when I think 3rd October.
So you fall 3rd week of October, you said?
No. 3rd October. First week of
3rd
October,
October, I see.
Sunday.
So there might be few classes where you might have it might be out of sync, because when we also change, we will be again in sync. Right?
Yeah.
So
So
fall
that
back.
should be fine. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we'll figure out what works the best.
Yep.
Okay. If there are no further questions, we'll conclude today's class. Thank you, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.